He screamed at me in front of everyone, "Get back to work." Boy then grabbed my arm and dragged me out like I was trash. But what he did not know, I was not the janitor. I was the billionaire who owned the entire building he was standing in. Keep watching, because in the next few minutes, the man with the mop rewrites every rule about power, prejudice, and what it really means to belong. That day, he shoved the door open like he owned the place. Boots heavy with entitlement clacked against the white marble floors of the Holloway Tower. A man in uniform, badge glinting under the chandelier, strode across the lobby like he was searching for someone to arrest. Eyes narrow, hand near his holster. His voice, sharp and cutting, boomed across the polished silence. "You, hey. You, what are you doing here?" I looked up from my mop. The bucket sloshed beside me. My back ached from the morning shift, and I had just finished buffing the corner tiles by the elevator. I blinked at him. Confused. "Sir." "Don T, sir?" "Me, boy." The word slapped me harder than any fist. "You just standing there staring at cars like you are, casing the place. That your plan? Waiting for someone to leave their Bentley open." I did not move. I would been spoken to like that before many times, over many decades. But never here. Not in my building. He stepped closer, towering over me. The gold lettering on his badge read Moore. Officer Daniel Moore. He had the clean-cut look of someone who never questioned himself. Slick blonde hair, pressed blue uniform, mirrored sunglasses even though it was indoors. He did not see me. Not really, just a black man with a mop near a luxury car. Behind him, a woman in heels clutched her purse and stepped aside, eyes wide with quiet discomfort, but saying nothing. The concierge at the front desk looked away. 2 security guards at the door watched, but made no move. No one ever moves. "Sir," I said, slowly, "I work here." "Oh, you work here." Moore's laugh was sharp and cruel. "Where's your ed? Where's your name badge? What is your employee number?" "Ha!" I reached for my back pocket. He flinched, hand on his sidearm. "Slow." He barked. "Move slow. Don T, try anything stupid." I froze, hand in the air, my fingers trembling. My heart did not pound. I was too old for that now. It just cracked. Quietly, the way it had too many times before. "Back pocket," I said. He snatched the worn leather wallet from my hand like I was a criminal. Opened it. Eyed the janitorial id badge with my face on it. Still doubting. "Ha, so you are the janitor." I nodded. "That still does not explain why you were staring at that Rolls Royce like you were ready to steal it." I looked at the car. It was parked near the main entrance. It was mine. I was not stealing it. "Yeah." He chuckled. "Let me guess. Just admiring what you will never afford." That made me pause. My name was on the title, but not in his eyes. I did not say anything, just stared at him. "What is your name, boy?" "Raymond." I answered. "Raymond what?" "Raymond Holloway." There was a beat. His smirk wavered, but only for a second. "Holloway, ha." He scoffed. "That is rich. Like the building. You related to the owner or something." I did not answer. I did not need to. He waved the badge in my face. We will see about this. Come on. Step outside. We will verify this at the precinct. He grabbed my arm not roughly, but firmly, like I was already guilty, like I had no right to object. The mop tipped and clattered to the floor. The water bucket spilled across the tile I had just cleaned. And just like that, the man who owned the building was escorted out of it, in handcuffs. As we walked past the lobby desk, the receptionist glanced up with a flicker of guilt in her eyes. The security guard looked down at his phone. No one stopped it. No one ever does. Outside, reporters were interviewing a celebrity couple exiting the hotel next door. No one looked our way. But somewhere in the lobby, a young intern raised her phone and hit record. Quiet. Careful. Trembling. They did not know who I was. Not yet. But they would. And when they did, they would remember this moment forever. Because I am not just the janitor. I am the man who built this place, brick by brick, deal by deal. And the man dragging me out by the arm. He is about to regret every word he just said. I was born in Harlem, in a one-bedroom apartment that barely fit my mother's wheelchair and my sister's crib. My father left before I could form a memory of his face. And by the time I was 8, I was cleaning floors in the corner bodega down the block, just so we could afford a bag of rice for dinner. They say poverty teaches humility. That is only half true. Poverty teaches invisibility. It wraps around you like a shadow and trains you to keep your head down, to apologize when someone bumps into you, to say yes, sir, even when you are the one being wronged. So when that cop grabbed my arm, when he yanked me away from the very building with my name on the deed Raymond Holloway Tower, I did not fight. Not because I was weak, but because I had learned a long time ago that real power did not always scream. Sometimes it waited. It watched. It planned. I stood on the sidewalk, the city buzzing around me, handcuffed, while Officer Moore talked into his radio like he had caught a terrorist. Got one suspect claims to work here. Janitor badge says Raymond Holloway. Yeah, same as the building name. Probably fake id. Requesting verification. I stared at the sky. Gray clouds gathering. Rain coming. A younger officer stood nearby, shifting awkwardly. His name tag read Vargas. Latino kid. Could not have been older than 25. His eyes flickered between me and Moore. I could see doubt forming. You sure about this, Dan? Vargas asked quietly. I mean, maybe he is telling the truth. Moore rolled his eyes. You kidding me? Look at him. Old man. Dirty uniform. You think some billionaire janitor is out here mopping floors in the rain. Could be symbolic. Vargas muttered. I almost smiled. Almost. A sleek black car pulled up a Rolls-Royce Phantom. The one I would been standing next to earlier. The same one Moore claimed I was casing. The driver stepped out. A tall black woman, a tailored navy suit. Heels clicking against the wet pavement. Her hair was in long braids, pulled back into a neat bun. Her presence was sharp, commanding. She did not flinch when she saw me in cuffs. Unts, she said. Voice cool. You good? I nodded. She turned to Moore. I am attorney Celeste Holloway. This is my client and my uncle. You will be removing those handcuffs now. Moore blinked. Wait, this is your uncle, and you are his lawyer. She raised an eyebrow. I am also his corporate counsel. Perhaps you have heard of Holloway Global Properties. His jaw tightened. He had. Everyone in the city had. He was acting suspicious. Moore said defensively, we had a report. From who? Celeste snapped. Because I have reviewed every camera feed in this building. You know who owns those cameras? She stepped closer, her heels punctuating each word like a gavel. My uncle. Raymond Holloway, the man you just paraded out in handcuffs in front of his own tenants. Staff and board of directors. A silence followed, thick and choking. Moore glanced at Vargas, then back at me. Well, how was I supposed to know? You were not, I said quietly, because you did not ask. You assumed. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but what could he say? He unhooked the cuffs and stepped back. My wrists bore the red rings of pressure. Celeste handed me a clean handkerchief from her purse. I wiped my hands and stood up straighter. You will be hearing from my office, she told him. I did not mean any harm. That is the problem. She interrupted. You never mean harm. But somehow, people like us always end up the ones in cuffs. Moore backed away. The younger officer, Vargas, gave me a look that almost felt like an apology. Almost. Celeste opened the door to the car. Let us go, Unts. You have got a meeting upstairs in 20 minutes. I nodded and stepped in. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the building. My building. And for a brief second, I remembered the first time I saw it, just steel, bones rising from a muddy pit in the middle of Manhattan. Everyone said I was crazy to invest. But I believed in it, just like I believed in this moment. It was not just about what happened to me. It was about how many others were dragged into the street without ever getting the chance to prove who they were. And I was not going to let this moment disappear like all the rest. This time, I was going to make it count. Officer Daniel Moore slammed the patrol car door harder than he needed to. The echo bounced off the polished glass of the Holloway Tower and disappeared into the thick hum of downtown Manhattan. His jaw clenched. He hated being made to look like a fool, especially by them. Inside, his partner Vargas sat silently, tapping nervously on the dashboard. You good, Dan? Moore did not answer at first. His face burned. What kind of billionaire walks around in janitor clothes? Vargas shifted. I mean, she said, he built this place. Maybe he just likes to stay grounded. You know. Remember where he came from. Moore snorted. Please, that is some inspirational poster bowl. But even he could not finish the sentence. His hands were trembling. Not from fear, no. He would never admit to that. But from something else, something sore that had been festering inside him for a long time. Daniel Moore was the kind of man who believed in order. In hierarchy, in knowing who belonged where. He was raised in a small town in Pennsylvania, where the cops were local legends and the black population hovered at 3%. His father was police chief. His grandfather had been a sheriff. Discipline, pride, protocol, that is what he was taught. But none of his training prepared him for being publicly outclassed by a janitor and a Harvard-educated attorney who happened to be black and bold enough to call him out. He pulled off his sunglasses and stared at his reflection in the side mirror. Blonde hair still perfect. Blue eyes, stormy with confusion. That was not supposed to happen. He would patrol the Holloway district for years. Never once did anyone mention that the mysterious Raymond Holloway, founder of one of the most successful private property firms in New York, was black. He would assumed, like many others, that the name belonged to someone white. Someone proper. But the old man he would barked at, the one with cracked hands and faded overalls, was not only the building's owner, he was the kind of man whose story could end careers. Moore's phone buzzed, a message from his precinct captain. "We need to talk, now." He knew what that meant. The video had gone viral. He pulled up the clip on his phone. There it was, the perfect shame loop. Moore yanking Holloway's arm, yelling, mocking his badge. Then the moment of revelation. The expression on his own face caught in high definition as Celeste introduced herself and explained exactly who her uncle was. The comments were brutal. "This is why we kneel. How many more times does this happen without a camera? That man owns the damn building and still gets profiled." Disgusting. Qualified immunity. Ha! Resign. His hands gripped the steering wheel. But there was something more, did not understand yet. Something deeper than the shame he felt at being exposed. What he had done was not new. It was a script performed 1,000 times over, rewritten in different neighborhoods, under different names. This time it just happened to reach the wrong man on the wrong day. Or maybe the right man. Moore exhaled and turned to Vargas. "I am not going down for this. He is just playing the system, flipping the narrative." Or, Vargas said cautiously, "maybe you just did not see him for who he really was." Moore's glare could be shattered glass. "Watch it." But Vargas did not flinch. Something in him had shifted too, because the truth was undeniable. Moore did not just arrest a janitor. He arrested a man who had once cleaned toilets to survive and now owned the entire skyline. And in that truth, there was no defense, no badge big enough. Moore started the engine, but he felt it, the shift in weight. The authority that used to sit so easily on his shoulders now felt like it was cracking under pressure. And for the first time, Officer Daniel Moore was not sure if he was the hunter anymore, or the hunted. They say injustice rarely starts with a slap, it starts with a look, a shrug, a silence that says, "That is not my problem." I sat by the wide glass window in my penthouse on the 37th floor of the building that bore my name, Holloway Tower. Below me, the city pulsed. Lights blinked in a syncopated rhythm. Sirens echoed in the distance. And yet, all I could hear was the quiet shuffling of my past brushing up against my present. Celeste, my niece, paced behind me, fire burning in her steps. I filed the complaint with the precinct. "Uncle Ray, I have already drafted the civil rights violation letter. Media's got the footage. We have got the legal side covered." I nodded slowly but did not look at her. My fingers ran along the deep red indentations on my wrists. They had started to fade, but it was not the skin that ached. I am not worried about lawsuits. Celeste, I said. I am worried about the others. The ones without lawyers. The ones who do not have penthouse windows or company empires or a niece who knows how to take down a man with words. She stopped pacing. Her voice softened. You mean the ones who do not get a second chapter? I nodded. That morning, I had sat down and written a list of every person in my building. The security guard who looked away. The receptionist who whispered sorry when I was escorted out. The tenant who recorded the video from the mezzanine quietly, then posted it anonymously. Each of them had a role. Some betrayed me with their silence. Others saved me with it. But what haunted me was not what happened in that moment. It was how normal it all felt, because it had happened before. When I was 13, I got slammed against a chain-link fence by a cop in Queens for walking home with a bag of groceries that looked too full. When I was 22, I was mistaken for a valet outside a restaurant I had just bought shares in. At 34, I sat in a board meeting while an investor asked me where the real owner was. This was not new. It was just finally caught. But there was something different this time. Power. Not the kind that comes from wealth, but the kind that comes from seeing the whole game and realizing you do not have to play by their rules anymore. I turned to Celeste. I want a tenants meeting. Tomorrow. Full attendance. Mandatory. No excuses. She nodded. Under what pretense? I stared out the window again. Bus passed by. A little boy in the back pressed his face against the glass. Eyes wide. Innocent. Tell them the owner has something to say. I replied. Something they should be heard a long time ago. The next morning, the lobby was full, not with janitors or receptionists or delivery drivers, but with residents. Suits, pearls, clutch bags, designer columns, and condescending smiles. I stood at the center, no longer in janitor's gear. Today, I wore what they expected of someone like me, tailored charcoal gray suit. Silver cufflinks, shoes polished until they reflected the marble beneath. But they still did not see me. Not until I stepped onto the platform at the front and picked up the microphone. Good morning, I said. The room hushed. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Raymond Holloway. I am the janitor some of you have nodded to, the man some of you have ignored, the one Officer Moore dragged outside on Tuesday. There was a collective inhale. I am also the founder and owner of Holloway Estates. This building, the ones next to it, the one across the river, they all came from these hands. Gasps, whispers, a few dropped jaws. And I am not here today to shame anyone. Not yet. I am here to ask a question, a simple one. When you saw me being pulled outside, what did you do? Silence. I will tell you. Most of you looked away. Some of you filmed. A few muttered apologies. But none of you said stop. A woman raised her hand slowly. She was in her late 30s, wore a silk scarf and oversized sunglasses. I did not know who you were. That is the point, I said gently. Would it have mattered if I was someone else? If I was just the janitor? She dropped her hand. I have no desire to punish you. But I do need you to see. This was not about mistaken identity. This was about comfortable prejudice, and I am tired of being comfortable for other people as peace. The room was dead quiet. Celeste stepped forward and handed out copies of a new policy. It was my first move: mandatory bystander intervention training for all residents and staff. No one spoke. Not yet, but some nodded, and I could feel it, a ripple in the current. I had been the quiet man with the mop for long enough. Now, they were going to hear me. The whispers began before I even left the lobby. Can T just do that? Can he? I thought he was just the janitor. Why would a billionaire pretend to mop floors? Pretend? No, I was not pretending. Every tile I scrubbed with purpose. Every hallway I walked was not for performance. It was a reminder of who I would once been, and who I still was underneath the cufflinks and corporate filings. I did not mop for applause. I mopped because it reminded me of where I came from, and the millions who never got out. Back in my office, a room few people even knew existed on the 35th floor, I opened the surveillance footage archive. Every camera, every angle. I started with the morning of my arrest, watched it again, frame by frame, watched myself mopping, watched Officer Daniel Moore storm in, watched the exact second he raised his voice, the point his hand reached for the cuffs, the faces that turned away. I marked each one, time-stamped it, cataloged it. Celeste entered quietly, setting a folder on my desk. Her face, usually a fierce mask of fire, now held a question. Are you sure you want to go this far, Uncle? I looked up. I let it go too many times. I said, this time, I am not cleaning it up with silence. She nodded slowly. Then you should see this. She opened the folder. Inside were printed reports, complaints from other residents. Minority staff, even 2 former doormen. Harassment, profiling, threats of removal, all tied to Officer Moore. He has been patrolling the Holloway district for 6 years. Celeste said, in that time, 12 complaints were filed. All dismissed, most from people of color. One woman says he asked if she was a nanny. She owns the penthouse across from yours. I flipped through the pages. How do you get this? I have friends, and your name opens doors. She smirked. Even the ones they think are locked. I set the file down. It is time the neighborhood knew. We did not go to the media first. That would have been easy. No, we took a different route. That night, I walked the block in my old work uniform. Same jacket, same worn boots. I passed the vendors I would bought coffee from, the corner bodegas that nodded politely but never really saw me. I visited the security guard who looked away that day and said, I forgive you, but next time, do not look away. He cried. Right there in the doorway. I knocked on every door in my building. Every floor. From the luxury pences to the quiet one-bedroom units tucked behind the elevators. When they opened the door, they expected a notice, a complaint, maybe a maintenance bill. Instead, they saw me, Raymond Holloway, the man they thought they knew, holding a packet of documents and a fire they would never seen in his eyes. I am not asking for apologies. I said, I am asking for your voice. If this has happened to you or someone you know, I need your story. By midnight, my inbox had 143 new messages. Tenants. Ex-tenants. Delivery drivers. Postal workers. Gardeners. All silenced. All with their own versions of Officer Moore. The next morning, the Holloway Bulletin, a private newsletter distributed only within our district, ran a bold headline. Holloway speaks. When a janitor owns the building, no one gets to hide. Attached were statements from residents. First-hand accounts, even screenshots of racist texts from Moore to a former Ho board member. The dominoes began to fall. But Moore, he did not go quietly. That afternoon, he stood in front of the station, pressed and proper, giving a statement to the press. I did what I was trained to do. He declared, if someone looks suspicious, you act. I did not know Moore. Holloway's identity. This is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I watched the broadcast with Celeste. Misunderstanding. I muttered. How convenient. Do we respond? She asked. No. I said, my voice firm. We escalate. By sundown, Celeste had filed an official civil rights complaint with the city. The complaint was backed by 12 community affidavits, 3 legal precedents, and internal data about precinct profiling statistics. The mayor's office called. The DS office called. Even a local senator reached out for a quiet discussion. But I was not interested in quiet anymore. Let them squirm. Let them fear the truth dressed in janitor's clothes. Because I was not done. Not even clothes. Officer Daniel Moore adjusted his collar in front of the long mirror hanging in the precinct restroom. His fingers fumbled at the buttons, and a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. He was not used to being summoned. He was the one who usually did the summoning. He was the one who barked orders, snapped commands, and walked into rooms expecting people to fall silent. But today, the silence was waiting for him. Outside, the patrol car was running. His partner, Vargas, was in the passenger seat, silent as always since that day. The shame between them was a third person, sitting in the back seat like a ghost that refused to leave. Moore did not know why the precinct captain had called him in full dress uniform. He did not like the tone of the message. You have been requested at a community forum at Holloway Tower. It is not optional. Be there at 7 p.m. sharp. Community forum. What kind of community forum needed cops in full uniform? He had a sick feeling that it was not going to be the kind he could control. At 6:59 p.m., he entered the golden-trimmed conference hall of Holloway Tower. It was packed. Press, residents, lawyers, every race, every age, suits and janitor jackets alike. Cameras mounted, live feeds streaming. At the far end of the room sat a long oak table, 10 seats, arranged like a panel. City officials, civil rights leaders, the precinct captain, and at the center, seated calmly, was the man Officer Moore had called boy just a few days earlier. Raymond Holloway. No mop in sight. Raymond wore a dark navy suit with subtle pinstripes and a gold tie pin in the shape of a lion's head. His hands were folded on the table. His presence was quiet, deadly quiet. Moore had seen men with power before, but never one who radiated it so silently. Moore's boots felt heavier with each step as he was ushered to a single chair in the center easel, the witness seat. They called it. No desk. No podium. Just him. Alone. The lights dimmed. The cameras clicked. Raymond stood. "Good evening," he began, his voice carried across the room with no microphone needed. "For those who are watching, my name is Raymond Holloway. You may know me as the man Officer Daniel Moore, handcuffed in front of this very building. My building, after assuming I was a threat because I held a mop near my own car." He turned, slowly, until his gaze landed directly on Moore. "Tonight, we are not just talking about me. We are talking about every time that power goes unchecked, every assumption dressed in a badge, every humiliation accepted as routine procedure." He opened a folder. "This is not a courtroom, but it is a reckoning." Celeste stepped forward, placing a tablet on the projector. A compilation of clips played. Moore yelling in the lobby. Moore grabbing Raymond. Residents whispering. Turning away. Old footage of Moore confronting a Latino delivery driver. Asking, "You lost, amigo." A voicemail from a black tenant, crying after being told she did not look like she belonged here. Moore shifted in his seat. Then came the final clip, a slowed-down shot of Raymond's face, as he was cuffed, quietly looking up at the security camera. Not angry. Not pleading. Just watching. I stayed silent because I did not want to make noise. Raymond said, once the screen went black, but silence is what allowed this. No more. The room stood still. The precinct captain spoke next. "Officer Moore, you are under internal review for conduct unbecoming and potential racial profiling." Moore opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at the crowd. He saw no support. No backup. Even Vargas stood at the back of the room. Arms crossed. Then came the twist. Raymond raised his hand. "One more thing," he said. "This building, and the 17 others in this district, all belong to Holloway Estates. As of tonight, a new policy is in effect. Officer Daniel Moore is permanently banned from all Holloway properties and prohibited from setting foot on our land." The room erupted, not with applause, but with the silent nods of justice long overdue. Moore stood, his face flushed. "You can do that." Celeste stepped beside her uncle, a knowing smirk on her lips. "Actually, we can, and we did, and next week, the city council will vote to remove your patrol authority from the entire Holloway zone. We have the votes." Moore backed away. For the first time in his career, the badge on his chest felt more like a target than a shield. As he walked out of the hall, the cameras turned away. The attention was not on him anymore. It was on the man he tried to humiliate, the man who rose without raising his voice. Raymond Holloway, not just the janitor. Not anymore. The morning headlines did not just whisper, they roared. Billionaire janitor exposes racist cop in stunning forum speech. You don't look like you belong. Officer Moore faces civil rights backlash. The man behind the mop, Raymond Holloway's stand for justice. And just like that, Daniel Moore was no longer a cop with authority. He was a symbol of everything the public had grown tired of. The video from the community forum had racked up millions of views overnight. Celebrities reposted it. Congress members referenced it. Church pulpits echoed with Raymond's words. But for me, it was not about the noise. It was about the shift. People did not just watch, they saw. For the first time, they saw a man in janitor's clothing not as less than, but as something deeper. Someone with dignity, with history, with power. Officer Moore, meanwhile, was unraveling. 3 days after the forum, he arrived at the precinct to find his locker cleared, his nameplate gone, and a formal document taped to the steel door. Administrative leave pending termination. His gun was already in the armory. His badge locked in the evidence room. The once proud officer who strutted through the Holloway district like he owned it now left the building with no radio, no backup, and no shield. He tried to call a press conference. No one came. He posted a tearful video from his car, claiming he was the real victim of cancel culture. Comments flooded in, but they were not on his side. You had the badge. You had the gun. You chose to use them against a man with a mop. You were not canceled, you were revealed. How many others did you humiliate without cameras watching? The department tried to save face. They issued an apology, a press release. The mayor's office promised a full-scale reform in patrol protocols. But the people were not fooled, because this was not a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, one that too many had accepted for too long. And now, it had a face. His name was Daniel Moore, and his fall was not tragic. It was inevitable. Back at Holloway Tower, we made changes not just symbolic, but systemic. Every tenant and staff member was enrolled in the Equity and Awareness program, led by Celeste and a rotating group of speakers from all walks of life: former janitors, wrongly accused men, women who had been stopped for driving while black, veterans, immigrants, LGBTQ+ activists. The first workshop ended with a simple quote projected across the grand ballroom wall. Dignity is not something we earn. It is something we recognize. We created a fund, the Holloway Foundation for Quiet Workers, a scholarship program for janitors, custodial workers, bus drivers, security guards. For every dollar the tower profited, a portion went into the fund, because I remembered being one of them, because I still was. One evening, a small figure knocked gently on my office door. It was Vargas, the young officer, his cap in hand. Eyes lowered. Holloway, he said quietly. I just wanted to say I am sorry. I should have done something that day. I should have stepped in. I motioned for him to sit. You were young, I said. You were scared, but you stayed. You watched. You questioned. That matters. I have resigned from patrol. He admitted. I have applied to the Civilian Review Board. Thought maybe I could help from the other side. For the first time, I smiled wide. That is how change starts, I told him. One person unlearning, one person speaking. Outside, children played on the stone steps where I would once been dragged down in cuffs. Someone had chalked a message on the pavement. This is Ma. Holloway's building. He makes it safe for everyone. I stood by the glass doors in my old janitor jacket, still my favorite, and watched them laugh, dance, chase dreams on the concrete. This was my victory, not Morris' downfall. But they're rising. I woke before the sun that day, same as always. I brewed my coffee the same way, black. 2 sugars. I pulled out the same faded blue jacket I used to wear when I was just Ray. The janitor, not Mirror. Holloway. The billionaire. My hands still remembered the rhythm of folding it. The weight of the fabric. The quiet dignity it carried. I did not put it on out of nostalgia. I put it on because I had work to do. Down in the lobby, the building was waking. The polished tiles still carried the echo of the town hall forum, the same spot where Moore had yelled at me, accused me, shackled me, where I had once been invisible, where now people looked up from their phones when I passed, not out of pity, but out of respect. The mop closet sat in the back corner, same place it had always been. I opened it, pulled out the familiar wooden handle, and dragged the bucket down the hall. The custodial team stared at me as I walked by. You do not have to do that, Ma. Holloway, one of them said softly. His name was Lewis. Dominican. Young, sharp, hard worker. I paused, looked him straight in the eye. I know I do not have to, I said. That is why it matters. 'Cause cleaning the floor was never about the floor. It was about reminding people that no job, no uniform, no pair of calloused hands should ever give someone the right to assume your worth. As I mopped, tenants passed by. Some offered nods. Others whispered thank you. A few could not meet my eyes. That was okay. I was not doing it for their recognition. I was doing it for the kid who stood outside the glass doors every morning, selling newspapers with holes in his shoes, just like I had once done. I was doing it for the single mother working night shifts, who now knew her son could one day own the building she cleaned. I was doing it because too many people thought a mop was something you outgrew, when the truth is, it teaches you more about grace, discipline, and grit than any executive chair ever could. That afternoon, I hosted the first Holloway Foundation luncheon in the rooftop garden. Janitors, doormen, elevator technicians, nannies, housekeepers, mailroom clerks, people whose names had never been on building directories, but whose fingerprints were on every surface. I want you to look around, I said to them. This building does not stand because of concrete. It stands because of you. Some wept. One older woman raised her hand. Ma. Holloway, why did you come back to mop after everything that happened? I smiled gently. Because if I do not, who will remind the world that this is honorable work, that this is power, too? Later, as the sky turned amber, I sat at my desk reviewing plans for a new property development. I would decided to convert one of our midtown lots into a school tuition-free, tech-focused, built for working-class families. Celeste walked in, holding a draft for next month's community bulletin. "You sure you want to keep this?" she asked, tapping the headline. I read it aloud. Raymond Holloway, the man with a mop and a mission. I nodded. Yes, that is who I am. As night fell, I returned to the lobby one last time. The floor sparkled under the chandelier. I leaned the mop back into the closet, locked the door. A young boy stood nearby, watching. 8, maybe 9. Brown skin, curious eyes. He looked at me like I was magic. "You are the boss, right?" he asked. I crouched down to his level. "I am a man who built something," I said. "But before that, I was a janitor. And before that, I was just like you." He nodded solemnly. "I want to be like you." I ruffled his hair. "Never let anybody tell you your work does not matter, or that you are not enough just because of what you wear." The floors were clean. But the real cleansing had happened elsewhere, in the hearts of those who once looked down, in the minds of those who now stood taller, in the reflection staring back at me, not just a man with money, but a man with memory. And in the stillness of that evening, I whispered to myself, I was never just mopping floors. I was building a future. The smell of fresh concrete always brought me back to the days when I carried bricks in torn gloves, with no promise of a paycheck, just the hope that one day my name would mean something. This building did not come from a trust fund or an inheritance. It rose from the ground because I willed it into existence. Because when no one gave me a chance, I bought the land they did not want. I hired the men no one believed in, and I laid the first brick myself. Now, decades later, I was being interviewed by a national news anchor sitting across from me in a sunlit atrium. Cameras rolling. She wore pearls and professionalism. I wore the same brown leather shoes I had on the first day of construction. She leaned in with gentle curiosity. "Ma, Holloway, you have enough money to retire 10 times over. Why go back to work? Why mop the floors? Why expose yourself to humiliation?" I looked into her eyes, not for the camera, not for applause, but for every janitor, every nurse, every bus driver watching from their break room screens. "Because the floor is where the truth lives," I said. "And too many people think standing above someone makes them better." I wanted to remind them I did not rise above anyone. I just refused to step on them. The clip went viral before I even stepped outside the studio. But it was not the fame that mattered. It was what came after. A few weeks later, I received a letter. Handwritten. "Dear Mayor Holloway, I used to clean bathrooms at a corporate law firm where people called me sweetheart like I did not have a name. Last week, I applied to take night classes. Your story gave me that courage. Thank you. Maria Alvarez." I framed that letter, hung it in the lobby right beneath a bronze plaque that read, "To the invisible ones who keep the world turning." I began receiving calls from other building owners, developers, even city council members. They wanted to implement the Holloway program, community hiring, bystander training, employee equity shares. At first, I hesitated. "Unts, this is your moment." Celeste urged, "You have already built the tower. Now build the movement." She was right. I had laid enough bricks for one lifetime. It was time to lay the foundation for others. I hosted a symposium. Called it "The Work That Matters." We invited custodial teams, janitorial unions, maintenance, veterans, civil rights lawyers, and young kids from underfunded schools. We did not talk about investment returns. We talked about dignity, about being seen. I stood on that stage, looking into a sea of faces I once walked among, and said, "If they tell you that cleaning is beneath them, remind them, everything they stand on had to be cleaned by someone else first." That evening, I returned to the rooftop garden of Holloway Tower. The skyline glittered like a cathedral made of glass and ambition. I leaned on the rail and watched the sun sink behind buildings I used to be too poor to enter. Celeste joined me, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. "You are becoming something bigger than this tower. You know," she said. "I do not need to be big," I said. "I just need to be real. You have always been that." She smiled. "They are just finally noticing." As the stars crept into the sky, I thought about my mother, how she worked 2 cleaning jobs, came home with blistered hands and a smile that never faded. She died before she ever got to see this tower. But I felt her tonight, in the breeze, in the laughter of children playing below, in the quiet pride rising through me like a song too long left unsung. I was not just a man who owned a building. I was a man who built it, brick by brick, floor by floor, respect by respect. And tomorrow, I would pick up the mop again, not because I had to, but because the world still needed reminding. That the hands that build do not forget how to clean. The morning air was cool and crisp as I stepped outside onto the marble front steps of Holloway Tower, coffee in hand, janitor jacket zipped halfway, gold lion head cufflinks peeking beneath the sleeves. I stood in the exact same spot where I had once been handcuffed, humiliated, and dragged across the tiles I used to polish with my bare hands. But today no shame lingered here. Only strength. Across the street, banners waved under the rising sun. Dozens of community leaders, civil rights organizers, and everyday citizens gathered for what had been declared the first annual Holloway Unity March, not just to honor me, but to honor the unseen. The overlooked, the voices that had been shushed for decades. They walked not behind me, but with me. That was the difference. That was the point. Inside the building, my portrait now hung in the main hall, not in a gilded frame, but etched in steel. Below an inscription that read, "Respect is policy here. Lose." The young custodian who once hesitated to speak to me now ran the building's maintenance team. Celeste had launched a citywide equity task force from the top-floor conference suite. Vargas, the former cop, who once watched in silence, now led de-escalation workshops for law enforcement officers across 5 boroughs. The ripples were turning into waves. Later that afternoon, I visited a new construction site in the Bronx, a towering structure of beams and cement that would soon become the Holloway Center for Justice and Trades. A school where youth would learn everything from plumbing and welding to coding and public speaking. A boy no older than 10 stood near the fence, watching the workers pour concrete. "You want to go in?" I asked him. Smiling, he turned to me. Nervous. I am not supposed to. Well, I chuckled. I built this place. And I say you are allowed. His eyes widened. You built this. I crouched down to meet his eyes. I built everything you see here. But the most important thing I ever built was the belief that people like you and me belong in places they told us we did not. I handed him a small metal keychain engraved with the initials, You keep this, I said. Someday, you build something bigger, and when someone tells you you do not look like you belong, you hold this up and tell them, this is mine. These are my rules. That night, I returned to Holloway Tower 1 last time. I did not take the Penthos elevator. I took the stairs, 37 floors, every step a memory of struggle, of faith, of the quiet dignity I refused to abandon, even when the world did. When I reached the rooftop, I stood beneath the stars, no cameras. No crowd, just me and the wind. I thought about Officer Moore. I heard he moved out of state, took a private security job somewhere out west. I do not hate him. I never did. I just pray that one day, when no one's looking, he will remember what happened here, not with resentment, but with reflection, because change does not happen when someone loses. It happens when someone learns. As I looked out over the glittering city, I saw something I never thought I would see, not just buildings I would touch or properties I would own, but people, free, proud, aware. The mop, the cuffs, the suit, the silence, the voice. It was never about one of them. It was about all of them. It was about being whole. So if you are reading this, and you have ever been dismissed because of the clothes on your back, the color of your skin, or the job title stitched on your chest, hear me now. You are not less. You are not invisible. You are the cornerstone. And no matter what room you walk into, build something they can never tear down. And so, I hung up the janitor's jacket for the night, not because I had to, but because I knew someone else would wear it tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, they would not be judged for it. This was not just about me. It was about what happens when we stop looking at who someone is and start seeing how they live. It was about dignity, about quiet resilience, and about the power of not raising your voice until the whole world has to listen. The lesson: never underestimate someone based on what they wear, where they stand, or how they speak, because the man holding the mop today might just be the one who signs your paycheck tomorrow. Respect is not earned by the clothes we wear. It is earned by the lives we touch, the courage we carry, and the truths we refuse to bury. If this story moved you, if it made you think twice about the person you passed by today, please like this video. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And do not forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories that deserve to be told, because every unheard voice deserves a moment to be heard. This has been Cop Yells at Black Janitor Doesn't Know. He is the Building S Billionaire owner. Thanks for watching.